There is so much embedded related to the infrastructure for AI. First, we see that Trump's request to not have states touch regulation from a regulatory standpoint, we see that get pulled out. Lots of moving parts from an energy standpoint. It's an exciting time.
What do you think about that moratorium? So previously, there was a big push to stop any new regulation on AI. Understandably, the Trump administration, wants to let this growth industry flourish. On the other hand, you have people who are concerned. I talked with Paul Tudor Jones recently, who said he thinks there's a better than 10% chance that AI destroys half of humanity in the next 20 years. He wants to see, and a lot of people have been very vocal about wanting to see some guardrails. So what do you think?
For sure. So there's a couple of things at play, Matt, and I think it's just how do we prioritize what wins out? So a couple of states, Utah, for example, trying to protect children from social media and how AI might play out in social media. Tennessee with the Elvis law trying to protect music rights. But at the other end of the spectrum, from a federal standpoint, you're trying to keep up and beat China to the punch. And so unlocking all the assets that can be used to train models, I think it's the balancing of all of those aspects and priorities. But the more that we hamstring technology and the brilliant minds in our country from achieving these goals, the harder it will be to achieve the national objective of winning out on the AI race.
By the way, have we done that with Nvidia? Are we hamstringing Nvidia by not allowing them to sell into that behemoth market that is China?
I'm going to just go with a hard yes.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is when you train a model, the hardware and the associated software with that hardware is really important. And so the switching costs, if you start with a Huawei chip and you then decide, okay, well now Nvidia is available to me, that switching cost is really high. And the opposite is obviously also true as well. So if wherever they are, if technologists can train initially on US technology and the underlying software embedded in that technology, the more likely that we retain long-term market ownership.
What are the lessons we can learn, Joe, from us as a world, certainly the United States, kind of farming out so much manufacturing to China that they have become so advanced when it comes to robotics? And that has certainly played into advanced manufacturing for everything, including sophisticated technological items like EVs. Mm-hmm. And they're
killing it on
many
EVs.
Would argue exactly that
and battery technology,
owning it. Yeah. So I don't know, what's the lessons we have learned in terms of, I don't know, what we've done in the past and how we can do it better?
Well, Carol, it's really hard to say that they're winning out on a apples to apples basis because, coming from a solar background, what we saw 10 years ago in solar was the Chinese government subsidizes that industry so much.
Right.
And the same thing is happening with EVs and associated.
They do with their startup community, right? 100%. They are real supportive of everybody doing everything, and then it's kind of like...
I think they've poured $250 billion into EVs over the last decade.
Yeah, and then it's kind of like Game of Thrones, like, the best one wins out, and they do really well.
Totally, and it's starting to trickle into storage. So, the advanced storage, advanced battery technology, the Chinese government is fueling that sector, and it is pushing them at least on an equal footing to American technology.
I don't get the Game of Thrones reference.
Well, I have read about where the Chinese government plans, maybe that's not right, Game of Thrones.
Are they the Iron Bank?
Maybe it's more like Hunger Games. No, maybe it's more like Hunger Games.
Okay,
Carol,
Hunger
you're playing
Games,
into
I
Matt's hand
understand.
here.
No, I know. I got to be careful. I love when Matt's like, what? Which is very fair. No, my point is they throw a lot of money at very supportive of a lot of companies trying out things.
Yeah.
And then eventually kind of the best companies win, but they are really competitive in getting to that process versus kind of our venture capital model that kind of is maybe choosier in the beginning. I don't know.
Choosier, but more supportive, I think, too. So I think if a couple of things. So I think whether we don't have a full understanding of how the efficacy level of either DeepSeek or
But aren't you surprised at how well they're doing with
Baidu.
EVs? Like, aren't you like, well, wait a minute. We're the land of innovation.
We still are. So I think we have to back up for just a second and remind ourselves how far ahead we are from the rest of the world standpoint on a lot of these technologies. So the models, the chips, what's coming out of China is close, but certainly not superseding where the American technology is. But if we keep making it harder for American companies to compete, they will eventually catch up. The technologists in China are incredibly talented, but they are not as advanced as we are today.
I want to ask about Mountain. Mark Douglas's company, you're on the board, recently IPO'd. They have jumped from there, now $21 a share, but I'm not as concerned with the day-to-day as I am about, like, what is this business and what is the promise that you see in it?
Well, Matt, it started several years ago in 2019, 2020, when the cord cutting of cable really started to take off. And so Mountain was really the first mover in allowing companies to advertise on connected TV. And today what Mountain does is from cradle to grave. So they help advertisers make their advertisement. They use AI to place that advertisement. They use AI to measure the efficacy of the advertisement, all in one suite. And so I think I'm biased, of course, but I think Mountain is from a technological standpoint, the leader in connected TV advertising.
It's just, I think, such an interesting company.
Yeah.
It gets amazing Glassdoor ratings. Like, the employees love working there. I think it's all remote. Is that the case, or?
100% remote, starting at the beginning of COVID.
That's pretty impressive.
Mark Douglas is a technological genius when it comes to advertising.
What is it about what they are doing that maybe tells you about kind of the companies or the way we operate going forward?
So what Mountain really specializes in is helping small business and medium-sized business advertise on to connected TV.
Right.
And so what the interesting moment we find ourselves in as it relates to AI and advertising is the changing landscape. So AI, and particularly agents, are changing how companies engage with consumers, and it's happening very rapidly in real time. And so I think as there's going to be a phenomenal switch potentially from Instagram and Facebook and even Google search to newer technologies.
Isn't this something we just talked about in terms of how China shops, right? And how Chinese consumers shop? Is that some of what you're saying? Like, it'll be different, even more, like, as you said, shift from some of the social media. It just seems like it's a much more connected world over in China in terms of how people are shopping. Is that where we're going?
100%, Carol. So the amount of data available about all of us and the inference that AI can learn about each of us and our shopping patterns and our needs.
It terrifies me.
Terrifies. It's terrifying. But it can almost get ahead of us needing to be involved in that whole purchase process. An agent can do it for us. So when Matt wants to bid on that last naturally aspirated Porsche, his agent is going to make sure he's first in line for it.